Number one,
for sure. This is a shocker.
Yeah, I want to say this may be the most wanted surprise of the year.
Yeah, I would
although
agree.
we heard some chatter, some positive reviews elsewhere. One of our guys had it in the bag in the spring and was like, I'm telling you.
What is up, everybody? How you living? No Putts Given. Tony, Chris, Golf by T, Golf by C on the interwebs if you want to find us there. We're back. Tony, how was your weekend?
It could have been better. Let's just leave it at that.
Leave it there. We're just going to leave it there. Roughly 7%, fact of the day, Tony, roughly 7% of all humans who have ever lived are alive today. Right this minute, right now. Anyway, speaking about your weekend, did you catch any of the USAM in my backyard at Cherry Hills?
Nope.
Final match, Tony. It was crazy. So Nick Dunlap, Alabama kid, and then my personal favorite, the fan favorite, Shipley, who had some long hair, more of a robust figure, doesn't necessarily look like your prototypical, maybe super well-groomed collegiate golfer or whatever. Phenomenal last match. It was super fun to watch, but Shipley couldn't quite get it done. Dunlap, I believe, second player ever to win both the U.S. Junior AM and the USAM. The other name on that list?
Eldrick
Tiger. That was interesting. But I talked to some people down at Cherry Hills, and on one of the days, it was maybe Wednesday or Thursday. I think it was Thursday. 1960, Cherry Hills, Arnold Palmer wins the U.S. Open, drives the first green, which is a par 4 at that time in history, a big deal. So they had players hitting persimmon woods and things off the first tee, try to recreate the shot, that kind of stuff. Who shows up, Tony? Who crashes the party? Who needed some attention?
Big Bryson
DeChambeau. Now, my hunch, Tony, is it possibly has tweaked something we put out on social media last week. We can post that up here, but just looking at, who were the longer hitters on LIV or longest drive distance rate on LIV versus PGA Tour, and it wasn't Bryson, was it?
He apparently took exception to not being listed first overall as the biggest hitter on LIV, despite the fact that the data came right off the LIV website.
So if he's just numbers.
He's got a beef, it's not with us.
It's like you go in and, you get mad at the doctor who measures you at 6'1". You're like, nope, I'm 6'3". Like, well, no, you're not. Just
maybe somebody forgot to carry the one over there. I don't know.
Hovland, good Lord. BMW, Olympia Fields. Victor Hovland, this is one of the greatest rounds people aren't talking about. 61. The course record was shot like twice over the weekend, a couple 62s. And then Hovland goes scorched earth on the back 9 on Sunday, shoots 28, wins it by 1. What? Hovland, slow down. Give everybody else a chance. And we have to talk about Ryder Cup because that's what everybody's talking about. So we got our 6 qualifiers, right? People,
is that coming up now?
12.
Are we almost there?
I think we got
a tour championship this week, right?
So tour championship this week. I know you won't be tuned in, but I will. And then Ryder Cup, not that far off, over in Italy. Top 6 automatic qualifiers as of close of business yesterday. Scottie Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Brian Harmon, Patrick Cantlay, Max Homa, and Xander Schauffele. That leaves, as we've said before, 6 available spots. So of these 6 names, Tony, you're going to tell me which 6 you think should be on the team. We have Spieth, Cam Young, Morikawa, Koepka, DJ, Big Bryson, Ricky, Fowler, Keegan, Bradley Sam Burns, JT, Justin Thomas, Lucas Glover, and Denny McCarthy. You can only pick 6.
You got to take that first 4. You got to take Smith, Young, Morikawa, and Koepka.
Okay, so you're okay.
So I'm taking those 4.
So we got Spieth, we got Cam Young, we got Morikawa, we got Koepka. All right, so you got room for 2 remaining. Who are you taking?
Man, I think Ricky Fowler's probably next on my list.
Okay.
He's playing well enough, and there's a sentimental component to that.
We love it.
And then, oh man, I think it's Keegan. I think it probably is Keegan Bradley. We've talked about this 2 weeks running. I can't make the case for JT right now.
I know.
You could make a case for Lucas Glover, but yeah, I'll take Keegan right now. But then we'll see, right? Because Tour Championship, that's I can't call it a big one. I know it's all contrived and whatnot, but it's big-ish. It's golf. It's competitive golf. We'll see how things shake out coming down the stretch here.
Yeah,
that's where I am. That's where I am right now, today, at this moment.
The only thing I'm going to change on you there, I like Spieth, I like Morikawa, and you have to have Koepka in there. I'm all aboard on those 3. after that, I think people should remember it's a team, right? So the first 6, it's not like the person 7th on the list, 8th, 9th necessarily should have a better chance than the person who's 12th. Okay, the first 6 are automatic, and then that's why they call them captain's picks, right? It's entirely up in the air. So I think you can make a case for a number of people on that list, but the strongest cases for me, Fowler. I'm all in on Ricky. If you want to say you ride the hot hand, I see the Lucas Glover pick. I would like that pick. I would welcome that pick. My hesitation would be, historically, putting has been a weakness, and this tends to amplify the importance of every single shot. And we saw, I mean, if you remember Hunter Mahan's chili dip wedge from several Ryder Cups back, that's a shot that lives in infamy. I would hate to see something like that happen to Lucas Glover after all he's come back.
Trying to jinx him? What are you doing here?
No, I get, I don't know. And it kind of sets up the thing. Denny McCarthy is a phenomenal putter. So if you're going, I can make an argument.
It's not like a gymnastics competition where you need somebody who's particularly strong on the ball. Like you got to play all the golf. It's not just like, he's our putting specialist. We'll just bring him in to work the green.
It's not drive, chip, and putt, and you don't.
No, he's got to play all the golf, not just finishing up at the end.
Okay, in that case, I like Fowler. I really, really like Sam Burns. He has been turning a corner as of late. I really like Sam Burns. He was one of the guys that shot 62 this week on a very difficult course. So those are the names I'm watching. It'll be interesting once we hear that. And as always, someone's going to feel left out, and someone's going to be left out, and someone's going to feel snubbed. I think that person this year is JT. I just not playing well enough. Overall, all the golf. If you got to play all the golf, he's not played all the golf. Speaking of not playing well enough, was watching again. I want to get your input on this, Tony. Pros switching putters. They're trying to find something. We've seen guys go back and forth, and particularly 2 players, Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy. You got Scottie, who is TaylorMade staffer, but had been playing a Scottie Cameron. And then you have Rory, TaylorMade staffer, who had been playing a TaylorMade putter. They kind of switched things.
They just take each other's?
Almost, right? You got a Spider Mallet, which Scottie Scheffler went to. He went away from the blade-style Cameron putter and still really struggled last week. Rory went away from the TaylorMade putter, mallet-style putter, to a Scottie Cameron mallet-style putter. What's going on? And what can we learn from this? What your average person watching TV, watching the golf on the TV?
I think it's.
What does this tell? Does this tell us anything?
I think it maybe is a little bit of a myth buster. They have this idea that the pros are completely dialed in and intimately familiar with specs and know exactly what they want and need from their equipment and are fit to the nth degree and blah 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 blah. At the end of the day, they are mental dwarfs in some circumstances, just like the rest of us. And when putters act up, you replace them. You don't ask questions. And I think that's what's going on here. So it's, a little bit of just trying to find something that works without probably much in the way of science behind it, much in the way of fitting science anyway from it, other than they're, in some respects, more like us than we think sometimes.
Yeah. And it's really, really cheap to buy more lottery tickets when you don't have to pay for them. So go to the tour, hey, I want to try this, duh. And it's not the same kind of financial burden, right, as somebody, hey, get fit for a putter, figure out what's going to work for you, why that is.
We've heard, how many stories have there been over the years? This guy pulled it out of the garage or went through a secondhand store or pulled something off the racks at Dick's on his way to the golf course. So it's...
Right. Jim Furyk wins FedEx Cup with a, $39 Yes putter. That one year was, had the hat on backwards and it was raining or whatever. And it was, hey, Furyk wins with a $39 putter. So Don't take anything from it, people, other than they struggle, just like you and I struggle at times. We're a week away, Tony, from ball test results coming out. I know people are interested. We keep teasing it, and we keep inching toward it. We're going to do all the normal stuff. We'll talk more about it next week, how balls performed off driver and irons and some of these things. But we're also going to do some kind of fun case studies, some kind of A versus B, maybe.
A versus B. Oh, yeah, let's get right to B.
Let's do it. What? So
B, C, D, all the others, yeah.
What are some of the case studies that people can look forward to us releasing in the not so
this will be
future?
A couple of interesting ones for sure. So we've probably mentioned, but we are doing a full-on comparative at kind of I'd say a little bit of a jacked swing wedge, the idea to really kind of crank the spin up and then spray the balls with water and see what happens. A comparison. It's similar to what we've done with wedges, right? Are some balls better than others when they get wet? And we expect to see sharp divides between urethane and ionomer. And I think it's fair to say we saw that, although it doesn't matter what material you are. If you start low spin, then you're still going to be low spin. So in that respect, maybe you don't lose as much.
So we got some wet wedge stuff. Yeah, we got some wet.
And I think it's fascinating to see even significant differences between kind of run-of-the-mill major OEMs, if you will, right? Some companies urethane retains spin in wet conditions better than others. And I didn't know necessarily that we'd expect to find that. We're going to be taking a close look at the Pro V1, the yellow one versus the stock white to see if there are any differences there. And that's proving interesting as well.
Nuggets in there. Yeah.
We're gonna break that down, and not only with the big test really show you how everything stacks up across the market as a whole, but we'll start breaking it out and really simplifying, giving you a way to compare key performance characteristics within an individual lineup. So how does a Z-Star Diamond, for example, really compare to a Z-Star XV? If you're a Srixon fan interested in Srixon balls, if you're Mark's Crossfield, for example, whatever it happens to be,
Mark.
Just want that. I'm going to be right here focused on the Srixon stuff. Just let me know within this small group which one might be right for me based on what I'm looking for. We're gonna try and do that as well.
Yeah. So really, and I think with that, try to help people understand what might you need out of a golf ball, because if everything offers control around the green or offers exceptional green side control, etc., then nothing does. It's like having a TSA pre-check deal. It's, hey, if everybody has TSA pre-check, guess what? Nobody has TSA pre-check. So we're going to demystify some of that stuff and help people out with that for sure. One other quick question, Tony. I hear a lot about forged irons recently. We're talking a little bit about some new stuff we know that is coming out, some stuff that's already launched, etc. What is a forged iron? Really?
What do you want it to be? Like, what claim do you need to make?
I guess what should it be then?
Right now, if any part of the iron is forged, I think at this point, like, you could forge the shaft and call it a forged iron.
Forge the ferrule, slide it on there.
We forged the tungsten that we stuck in the toe, therefore the iron is forged, whatever it happens to be. Yeah, I believe in the Mizuno school of thought, right? Like, if the part that hits the ball isn't forged, the iron isn't forged. But
I like that.
There are no guidelines here. I don't get to make the rules. It's just an opinion.
What does that actually mean? Why is that interesting? Why should anybody care? We'll get there a couple episodes from now, but I like that school of thought too. I'm in on that one. If the part that you hit with the ball or makes contact isn't forged, the club isn't forged. Face. Preferably the face and the neck in one piece.
That is unenforceable in court, though. So
absolutely unenforceable. But in our court of Chris and Tony, it's enforceable, and we rule against people that aren't going to do it that way. All right, Fairway Wood results. Forged. We got Fairway Wood most wanted results out. Give me the rundown. 5th place, 4th place. Let's do that. Give me the rundown of the top 5.
We're going to count them down from 5 to 1.
5 to 1. 5 to 1. What's 5?
Number 5, the TaylorMade Stealth 2, no suffix.
TaylorMade Stealth 2, no suffix in 5th place. In 4th place,
Cobra LTDX. So last year's winner, tested again.
So last year's number 1 is this year's number 4. That's pretty good for Cobra. I mean, in terms of
we got some high scores in this test, which typically means they've probably got some low ones in there as well. It's good. Number 3.
Yep.
This one, personal curiosity for me. Ping G430 LST, the expensive one. The one that was late to market, the one everybody was waiting for if you were the kind of person who waits for fairway woods. The hybrid and this fairway wood seems to have performed really well for us as well. Seems like Ping has got it sorted out across the board now. Look out.
Yeah, look out is right. And in the second spot,
TaylorMade Stealth 2 HD.
HD.
The forgiving one. Our favorite, the Stealth 2 Plus, that we thought was really cool. Didn't hit the board here. Not particularly surprising because that's kind of a low spin, maybe super better players type design. And we'll talk about this more in a second. But it's interesting with how the fairway wood space doesn't necessarily get divided by manufacturers, but gets divided by the reality of the golfer. So we can come back to that.
I want to hear more about that for sure. This is a shocker.
Yeah, I want to say this may be the most wanted surprise of the year.
Yeah,
although we heard some chatter, some positive reviews elsewhere. One of our guys had it in the bag in the spring and was like, I'm telling you. So
yeah,
Wilson Dynapower. I mean, they didn't even fit all the letters on the sole, Dynapur on the sole,
Yeah,
Dynapower on the sticker, and wanted winning.
I think John
pretty
Barba,
wild.
our esteemed colleague John Barba, even said something to the effect of, "It's the only fairway wood I've ever hit that I didn't hate."
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at when I say the way. And it's interesting because when we look at the best overall categories, the way it broke out, best for forgiveness in this test, the PXG, XF, not surprising. Those typically do really well in the forgiveness category. Best for distance, Stealth 2, the standard. Best for accuracy, TSR 1, kind of makes sense. And then you get into the subjective stuff, testers thought. Right. Best for sound, they like the sound of the TSR 2. A little bit of a disconnect. They like the feel of the Stealth 2. Mm-hmm. Best looking, no surprise, TSR 3. I think it was the best looking driver as well. It's just really clean, kind of classic shape, high gloss paint that some people still like. So I understand that. And then most likely best for likelihood of purchase are, hey, everything you tested, which one are you going to most likely going to go out and buy? Stealth 2. So really strong showing for TaylorMade. Wilson, the winner. And as I was talking about or hinted at earlier, that this kind of divide in the market, and that's because you have probably fair to say two types of fairway wood players if we're going to get my brush out and paint with the broad strokes. And very simply, you have guys who can hit fairway woods and those who can't. Right. And realistically, I've said for years the 3 wood, and that's what we test. We test 3 woods. I would love to get to the point where we have time to do 5 woods and maybe even 7 woods, and grow to the point where we're doing 9 woods too. That would be fun. But for now, looking at 3 woods, I believe the hardest club in the bag to hit. And the LTTX, coming back to that one too. And that's just, we know, built on the original LTD chassis. I mean, that was a fantastic fairway wood. 5 plus years ago it was. Still is. So yeah. And again, so I think if you take that breakdown of average golfers who need forgiveness in their fairway woods, I think this top 5 is certainly reflective of that. And then if we go down the list, and this is a curiosity for me, I haven't gone down all the way to see all right, where do we get into something that I would consider to be a true better player design? We're going down. So continuing on down the list, right? So we went from Stealth 2, now we go to TSR 1 to Paradigm X. MK2, the Shrixon maybe, but still probably more on the forgiving side. PMG 430 Max, SFT, Torage 723, Aerojet Max. You got to go all the way down. Now we're getting into the TSR 3, which is the one that's in my bag. I absolutely love it. Best fairway wood I personally have ever hit. Me, one guy, not a full test pool. That's the difference here.
Yeah, we'll get into more kind of why that is in the after show. We're going to do a deeper dive on fairway wood testing, what you might want to look for if you're in the market for fairway wood, maybe which category of player you fall into, and then kind of also looking at that. Like I said, we test 3 woods, but that doesn't tell the whole story of how you might want to set up your bag in that space between driver and whatever your longest iron is. Maybe it's a 4-iron, maybe it's a 5-iron, maybe it's a 6-iron. So we'll get there. Ball Lab this week, Tony. You let the people vote on the interwebs, and the Twitter people spoke. They said, we want Titleist Pro V1x. Any surprises, or still pretty much the best one out there?
It's a Titleist ball plant 3 golf ball. As the database has grown, that high 90 score has become very, very, very difficult to achieve. So, 85, no bad balls, good rating for compression. So that's our above average. Above average for diameter and weight. Titleist is always average for weight. I think that's one where it's really tough to be more consistent than anybody else. And then high end of the average range for diameter. And so that's one where if we dump in a few more balls into the database and maybe they're below average, that may kick that one up. That could kick the Pro V1X up to a 90. It's exactly what I would expect from a ball plant 3 ball, and that's it's boring, but whatever. It's Titleist. You get what you pay for.
It's boring, and that's get what you pay for. It's what people expect, and as we note as we go through it's getting much more difficult to achieve the ball quality award status. So you have to reach a certain score based on the whole database at that designation of ball lab quality award, and Pro V1X achieved that. Correct?
It did, yeah.
Like you said, that's kind of what you expect from Titleist, why you're willing to pay a premium for Titleist if you do play Titleist golf balls, and in no way, shape, or form did this one disappoint. So, good news, people. As expected. I like to think about golf clubs, Tony, that I should never play. Sometimes I think about these clubs, and we have a wet wedge test coming up. We mentioned golf balls and testing conditions with a wedge, making the golf ball wet. This one specifically, we flipped it around. We made the wedge added moisture, right? And there are some wedges that you should never play.
Yeah,
Ever.
this is just one of those things where
Ever.
I think, obviously, it's not. I think we can point to things and show you where moisture shedding is becoming more of a talking point in the wedge category. We go that right. Ping's been talking about it years with the Glide and their hydrophobic 2.0, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're too far out from 3.0 because it's been a while. Finished with Mizuno's done some stuff channeling water, talked about it specifically. TaylorMade with MG4s that just came out, very specifically talking about how that wedge can reduce the impact or influence of moisture when you are playing in those conditions. It's all about retaining spin. That's ultimately what you want is consistency, right? In a perfect world, if I flush a sand wedge in dry conditions and it spins 10,000 RPMs, in a perfect world, I flush that sand wedge in wet conditions and it still spins 10,000 RPMs and it still launches at the same angle, right? That's the other piece. Launch angles change as well. So yeah, it's something to keep an eye on for sure. And when you see situations where wedges go, I don't have the hard numbers in front of me. We're still in the test process, but we've got some preliminary data, and you're seeing wedges that drop from somewhere in the 9,000 range. That's probably typical for our player testing on a full wedge to sub 3,000, spinning in some cases less than a driver. Yeah,
those are the wedges you should never play.
That's a failure of engineering and manufacturing.
Tony, are you feeling fast?
No.
Good. Then we'll do a moderated version of speed golf. You don't have to I don't want you to have to stretch out or pull anything anyway. But question 1, here we go. 5 questions on the docket. Answer them as quickly as you feel you can without hurting yourself. How often do you regrip your own golf clubs?
What usually just get new irons. No, I mean, I've been an MCC +4 mid-size guy for a while. Comfortable there. MCC Although as I get older, starting to think about maybe trying the squishy ones, but if I could get like
the arthritic ones, get you some of those big arthritic ones.
Something a little squishier. We'll see. I'm not there yet.
I'm an MCC, just mid-size, straight mid-size. Love it. And the reason I was going to ask you is I just regripped a club the other day, one of the wedges, and it had been a while.
Why did you regrip a wedge? We've talked about this.
I know. I sent a message to some of our Vokey people, and I'm still waiting or something. But I needed a new grip. I played with a lot, practiced with it a lot. It's time for a new grip. And I was like, ooh.
Unfamiliar with practice. I don't
Absolutely. Anyway. Speaking of which, getting old and sore and those things. Are you a massage gun guy, Tony? You a big massage gun guy?
Yeah.
Me too. Do you have a favorite one?
I have a Theragun because they sent it to me, and I have a Hypervolt because it was in like a media package thing. I'm definitely, of those two, I'm more of a Theragun guy.
More of a Theragun guy?
Yeah, I love the feeling of being punched by the fist of 1,000 tiny babies. That's good stuff. You use it on your calves? I tell everybody, the calves are where the magic happens. You beat on your calves, and then you're just like walking on air. You'll never feel so light. Anyway.
I love it. Great answer. We are headed, a couple of us, not you, but I am, headed out to Studio B, the new opening.
Screw you too, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you weren't invited.
Bettinardi, who I am.
Bettinardi, new tour fitting studio. Looks pretty cool. I'm just going to throw it out there. If people have questions, you want us to cover something, post it in the comments.
And let Chris know. I was not invited. I'm not going.
No, and if you let Tony know, he won't tell me. So let us know. Okay. This week, Brandel went off. He just eviscerated a number of players, specifically Phil Mickelson, and to a degree Patrick Cantlay. But one of the things he said about Phil was that because of all of this inclusive, he felt that Phil should be kicked out, have his ticket revoked from the Golf Hall of Fame. Agree or disagree?
Oh, man, this is one of those things where you get so wrapped up in this idea of the integrity of the game and everything that golf is supposed to be, and we all know that it isn't. And so, so rather than just continue with that mythology and line of BS, fundamentally, I don't know too much about the Hall of Fame other than it's basically a point system. It always struck me as weird that you could get in while you're still playing as opposed to baseball or the NFL, things like that. But fundamentally, unless you can show me where in the Hall of Fame bylaws, procedures, policies, whatever you want to call it, there is a morals clause similar to what it has in baseball, unless that section exists, and I don't believe that it does, being a shady, weaselly kind of Mickelson type, you know what? He played his way in, period. I can get that you don't like him. I don't particularly like him, but he played his way in, period, hard stop. Yeah. Unless there's some clause, unless they want to change the guidelines, the rules, I'm sorry. But
yeah, I don't think you can kick him out. My bigger issue is it's a slippery slope, right? If you want to open the morality door, then do we really want to go down that road and fully investigate everybody that's in there? and or in there. And
and what do you what type of behavior is permissible and what isn't? Because there are some very popular names that you would have to take a big long look at. And I don't expect it would go well. Yeah.
So I don't think you can, and I don't think you do.
Yeah, unless there's a dead hooker adjacency clause.
We got travel bags here, Tony. I haven't used this one yet, but I'm going to.
It's a new travel bag?
I don't know what it is. It's like a duffel that can expand into a travel bag, I think. It's
yeah. You told me about that.
It's duffel and it expands. We may have a We Tried It coming on this. I think Connor is working on it because some of the travel gear is exceptional. I know that I use it.
It's you don't think about it, but they do innovative luggage kind of thing.
Like I said, I was going to say this is one thing I really like about Stitch as a company is they think about the things I don't expect them to think about. Or it's like, oh, that's a nice touch.
That can be a double-edged sword.
It can be, but like you have these little buttons underneath, the contrast stitching on the little island, like little things. I appreciate they think about those things because I would not have said, "Oh, that's something I'm looking for in that particular product." So we'll post a little coupon code below. I think we'll call it "Tony's not going to Bettinardi with me this week" to save 20%. No,
is it?
Yeah, it'll be a little easier than that. But if you're so inclined, take a look. Let us know what you find. Like we said, if you're interested, stick around for the after show. We're going to dive deeper into fairway wood testing, percentages, things, all that kind of stuff. Questions, post them below. We're always happy to get to those if we possibly can. And as always, we out. But we'll be right back. And we're back. Tony, let's dive into a little bit deeper. Dive a little deeper. Get on the scuba gear and go beneath the surface. Most wanted fairway wood stuff. Again, just quick recap, right? A couple tailor-made fairway woods in the top 5. We had Ping, the G30 LST, the one people were waiting for a little bit. That was right in the middle of the top 5 at 3, I believe. And then last year's winner, the LTDX from Cobra, was this year's number 4. So consistently high performance, couple years in a row from that specific model. And then maybe the surprise winner of it all, maybe like you said, maybe the surprise winner of all of most wanted testing so far this year, the Wilson. So all that being said, first thing I want to talk about, we talked about this with the other categories of tests and how we weight different performance criteria. When we're doing a test like this, like you said, we're looking at 3-woods, which tend to be 15 degrees-ish. That's a stock 3-wood. How about in terms of the performance characteristics? Break that down for me. What are we looking for? How do we weight that?
Yeah, I got to pull it up. Let's see.
Okay, that's fair.
It's been a while, right?
It has been a while.
All right, here we go.
So
forgiveness, the metrics are very similar to how we do it with a driver. So we have like that.
Okay.
I believe we use the straight shot percentage and the playable shot percentage, that type of thing. So setup is fundamentally very similar to a driver in how we run the test as far as the weighting of the categories. So it's distance is 40%, accuracy is 40%, and then 20% of the score comes from forgiveness.
Okay.
And that's interesting given that, again, with forgiveness being 20%, to still see more forgiving fairways rise to the top. And part of that is there's probably some correlation with accuracy. And again, with a category that's just inherently difficult to hit, I think you're just going to see these more forgiving, or at least larger, more confidence inspiring, if you will. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but those type of 3-woods rise to the top here.
Yeah. So again, distance is pretty straightforward, right? But maybe it's worth reviewing just really quickly. What's the difference between accuracy and forgiveness in our criterion? What does that mean? Because that doesn't necessarily, people go, oh, look, this one had X, and that means forgiveness to me. But
I think there's maybe a disconnect, or maybe too much of a connect in the way golfers think about forgiveness as it relates to accuracy. And sometimes those get used interchange, like the club that goes the straightest is considered forgiving. And that it can be an element of forgiveness. It's not. That's why we have a separate accuracy kind of bucket off to the side, right? We look at that differently or in isolation. So our forgiveness metrics are consistency metrics. How consistent is the ball speed? Are we see a huge range, or are the deltas pretty tight on that? Likewise, the carry distances. Are we that front to back? That's a metric golf companies use a lot. I think in Foresight Pro, for example, it's called range. How far is that that delta from the shortest shot to the longest shot? So that's something we look at. And I believe we look at, I think dispersion, kind of that elliptical pattern is also rolled into our forgiveness metrics.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, so really,
And I think we also look at spin consistency as well with a fairway wood.
or even spin consistency, as some might want to call it. I've heard that.
Some might want to call
thrown
it that. Sure.
Out there. All right, I have a hypothesis, and tell me how ridiculous this maybe is. But if we have distance is 40%, and then we have accuracy is another 40%, and then 20% as our forgiveness metric or consistency of ball speed, launch, so on and so forth, is it possible that, again, because we're dealing with smaller heads, right? We're not going to necessarily maybe get the same variation in ball speeds. Shorter clubs, maybe not see as much variation in accuracy, where it's like the forgiveness metric becomes a tiebreaker. So they're pretty close in category 1 and 2. And I'm just trying to make sense of, like you said, we look at that whole chart and we see that first chunk is really more forgiving style fairway wood heads until, like you said, we get down to TSR 3.
TSR 3, yeah. Like the first of the, and that's not an unforgiving design by any stretch, but it would certainly be kind of the first one that maybe crosses, if there's a firm line between sort of speed or better player, however you want to classify that, and forgiveness. Mm-hmm. That's maybe the first one that I think is clearly a foot over the line.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's maybe something to that or not. I don't know, but made me think that. What do you make of Wilson?
Yeah, like I said, big shock. And again, it's one of those, it's maybe the textbook example of a perfect compromise fairway wood. So I'm looking at our data here. And so, for example, ball speed, let me get a better sort on that, or actually sort on that would be good. So we're sorted inversely. So ball speed, top 10, but not near not
1 or 2.
Not fighting for the lead. Fourth, so solid. Mm-hmm. And again, I would say eyeballing statistical relationships, I would say, in that second tier.
Okay.
Not super spinny by any stretch, on the lower spin side, actually. So interesting, given everything else we've talked about, but still, I wouldn't classify it as low spin. It's still, above 3,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and then again, shot area right in the middle to upper, like just kind of on the upper end of the chart consistently. But I think it's one of those, and I'm sure we talk about this, right? Everything, or not everything, but a lot of clubs in a test are at least long for one golfer.
Sure.
And so it may have been the absolute longest for someone, but what we see is just a consistently in the top 5 or 10 for every metric, sometimes a little better than that. And so it's just one of those where if you were walking into a hitting bay looking for the longest fairway, it might not get your attention. If you're looking in isolation at which one you hit the straightest, maybe it's not the Wilson. Which one you think, whatever your interpretation of forgiveness is, because again, that's how we do forgiveness. It's definitely not this thing where everybody agrees on the quantifiable formula that defines it. Right. But it may not be top of your list for that either. And yet, like if you're trying to find something that checks all the boxes on balance, the data I'm looking at suggests it actually does that really well. So
and that's why you get that type of result. Now, you mentioned that you're a TSR 3 guy in your 3.
13 and a half too.
13 and a half.
Mighty, yeah.
You have a lot of dynamic lofted impact. You're gifted in that regard. We test 3 woods. You mentioned, God, I would love to test 5 woods or 7 woods separately. Why is that? Why should people maybe think about a 5 wood or a 7 wood differently than how they think about their 3 wood? Because aren't they all just fairway woods?
It ultimately depends on what you want from it.
What do you want? Like,
I was going to say, using myself as the example, right? Not to break any trademark, copyright, etc., but the 3 wood for me is primarily a mini driver. Okay. Like that's how I think of it. I don't use it off the tee a ton. It's more of an off the fairway club for me, which is why I prefer the 3 wood over an actual mini driver. But for me, that's a club that I like. I want it to go as long as possible. Period. Okay. Like it is basically, I need to hit monster. I want to try and get there from anywhere, even if the math doesn't work. I'm still trying to get it. The 5 wood for me tends to be more of a target club. So that's why we've talked about this before, like the Cobra lineup, where you can go from what used to be the big tour, right? The larger Titleist has it with the TSR 2 Plus, for example. For me, I just prefer the 3 to the 2 Plus, but kind of that idea of a bomber fairway that you pair with something that is higher launching, higher flying, softer landing, more of a target club. Like this is my 225 club, whatever that number happens to be for you. So that may require a fundamentally different design, something again that spins more, that is higher flying, loft for loft. And then in the 7-wood space for me, and again, as a guy the rare guy that carries 3 fairway woods, I just want it to be high and straight. And I carry that because it takes a lot of that left and right out. It just it gets up in the air sometimes higher than I want it to. And it spins a lot, but it comes down soft and it mostly flies straight. So that's fundamentally a different thing than, again, the TSR3. I don't want that to spin a lot. I want that to spin as little as I can and keep it in the air. Yeah,
it's interesting. Part of what I'm picking up on is, like I said, we have a fairway wood test. But the reality is, people should treat, again, every slot in their bag almost as its own equation that you're trying to solve. Okay, I want my driver to do X. It makes sense, right? People see driver, okay, optimize driver. Got it. But I almost think of fairway woods a little bit like wedges, where I want to pair them a little bit. Like I tend to, again, on my stock wedge setup, I tend to go with a higher bounce 56 and a lower bounce 60, just in general, whatever the grinds are. But that's the combination that I'm comfortable with. In my fairway woods, I like to go with, so I found this in the garage. I want to bring it back in. You've seen that, Tony. You know what that is.
One time I tried putting a lead tape on the inside of it just to see what would happen. About as well as you would expect, yeah.
This is one of my favorite fairway woods of all time. Like I said, so this is the King LTD where they had the spaceport. This was the first one with really that kind of zero gravity idea, or getting the CG right at the neutral axis. So it could really truly be a higher launching, lower spinning type of fairway wood. And Cobra's architecture hasn't strayed too far from that on at least one model in every lineup. Like you said, there was the Big Tour, and then like right now we have Aerojet LS, but they've all kind of are born of this type of fairway wood. So this is my fairway wood in my 3-wood that I really like, because a lot of the courses, and this is more of a course setup thing than it is anything else, where I need a 3-wood to be able to hit it off the tee. If I'm going for a par 5 and 2, it's not with my 3-wood. It's going to be likely with my 5-wood. And so my 5-wood or my hybrid, I want something different out of. So I love having this type of a fairway wood in my 3-wood. So this would be like the TSR2 Plus. This would be the Cobra LTD, Big Mama Jamma, something like that. And then,
LST is kind of in that vein a little
LST,
bit, right?
And I have not hit the ping one yet, so I don't know how it performs, but I put it in there. But my 5-wood, I love that idea of more of a tour head, if you will. It's just a big hybrid or a smaller fairway wood. It's that same space where maybe
super hybrid, utility wood, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah, what you want to call it in there. And this wasn't that long ago, but when Cobra reintroduced some of that rail technology on a 5-wood, this had a lot to do with Ricky Fowler, had a lot to do with the second shot at Augusta National on 15, I think, trying to get a club for a specific type of shot distance. But that is the one that I want to be able to launch high with not a ton of spin and have it hold on a green or reasonably close to a green. It's probably what I would hit off number 3 at McGregor. It's that type of a club for me. But really to think about them separately. So as much as we just test them as a single category, we really test them as 3-woods, not necessarily fairway woods inclusive. But we might get there. We might change that up.
One day. I'd love to do more.
Mm-hmm. We all would love to do more. And maybe we will sooner rather than later. Why do you think, another question just on the fairway wood part, why do you think we tend to see this as a club, even when you look at really good players, that maybe if we took all 14 clubs and put them in order of how often better players switch them out, wedges might be one because they wear out driver technology, blah, blah, blah. I would almost guarantee you the very bottom of that list is fairway woods.
Oh, I've said for a long time, if you find a fairway wood that not only you like, but you hit well, don't mess with it. It's a difficult one to replace. I've been lucky this year going from TSI to TSR with the 3-wood. It's been awesome. Maybe not as awesome with my other fairway woods. I would think step forward with one, maybe small steps back with the other 2. Mm-hmm. So it's newer is definitely, again, a lot of the marketing is distance based, and sometimes newer is longer. Sometimes it's not, but very often newer is just different, right? We just tweak this one thing or these 2 things, and it may or may not work better for you. And in the fairway wood category where a lot of golfers already struggle, if you've got one you hit well, like why mess with it? And even on tour, you see that's a place where you've seen some old ones win over the years. So
without a doubt, there was a time when like Tour Edge exotics, that was the deal. I remember Luke Donald, Brant Snedeker, that was a spot in the bag where they got a CBX and kept it in there forever. And it was that go-to. And it's almost like, yes, there are technological advancements every year. So like Ping G430, it is not the same as 425. That being said, these incremental changes in technology probably aren't more impactful than if you have one, like you said, that you hit well and you can hit it off the deck or you can hit it as needed or whatever the case is, like hold on to it. Use it, love it, don't lose it, and just hold on to that thing.
Yeah, don't go looking for trouble.
Don't go chasing waterfalls, Tony. Stick the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. That'd be my advice. That would be my advice. Do you have any other advice, Tony?
No, not today.
Nothing? No words to live by? Nothing like that?
No, I just achieved my 200% movement goal by moving my arm. So.
By sitting there? I know, I just got told to stand. Like,
sending mixed messages.
Right? Well, as always, Golf Spy T, Golf Spy C, find us on the interwebs. Ask us questions. Leave us some feedback. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Next week, ball test, Tony. We're going to talk all about golfing ball testing and things. That's next week. Set your calendars and subscribe. All those things. We'll see you next time. We out.